What's going on, guys? Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Amigoscode. In this video, I'm going to teach you about MongoDB. So this course is actually the cut down version of the full course, which you can find on my website, and I've got coupon code for you so you can take advantage of this course. So it's a course that you've been requesting it for some time now, so you can go and enroll and get a certificate. But in this video right here, I'm going to teach you how to get started with MongoDB. So we're going to use Docker to spin up a MongoDB instance, as well as Mongo Express, and you'll see how to connect to the database using the Mongo shell. So we're going to use the terminal quite a lot. Then I'm going to explain the core concepts about Mongo, such as collections, documents, how to perform queries, updates, deletes, and all that good stuff that you need in order to build applications. If you're new to my channel, go ahead and subscribe. Give me a thumbs up so I can keep on recording these videos. And as I said, if you want to gain a certificate, go ahead and enroll on my website, where I've got a 20% discount code that you can use in order to take advantage, and so you can get a certificate and then show that to employers. So knowing how to use MongoDB, it's so crucial. You can build scalable applications very fast. Without further ado, let's kick off this video. I always tell my students to practice as I teach. That's the best way of you learning any new programming language or technology or anything really. Just practice as I teach. Also join the private Facebook group as well as Discord. So combined, over 20,000 people waiting for you. So if you have any questions, go ahead and ask us, and everyone will be able to jump in. So including myself, I've learned so much over the years just having such a great community. So people with different backgrounds, different skills, and yeah, it's just amazing. So join the community. And also don't be shy of asking questions, right? So even silly questions, no question is silly question. So make sure to join the community, and we are waiting for you. Right, let me begin by making you understand what MongoDB is. So if you've done any kind of relational database such as Postgres, MySQL, then you most likely heard about tables, rows, joins, constraints, and all that stuff, right? So usually if you have an application that you want to build, then you need to have all of these tables and then basically have the correct foreign key, so that then you can perform the joins to collect data which is associated in all of the tables that depending basically on the application and the query that you're performing, right? So sometimes you kind of just want to build applications without having to worry about all of these constraints, and this is when MongoDB comes in. So if you've done some JavaScript, for example, if you want to learn more about JavaScript, I've got a free course on my website teaching JavaScript. But basically, if you've done some JavaScript, you most likely written JavaScript objects or JSON objects, in more specific, right? So JSON objects. So JSON objects in Mongo, it's what it's called a document. So within a document, you can store pretty much anything, right? So it's a key value pair, and for the value you have data types. You can store strings, you can store numbers, you can store arrays, you can store objects within objects, and basically you can then build your collection. So in Mongo, instead of tables, it's a collection, right? So you can build a collection without worrying about too much on how the table or the collection looks like, right? So you can actually define a schema for your collection or not. It's actually optional, right? Whereas in relational databases, you need to say create table and then the actual field. So for example, create table and then name and then varchar and then age, integer, and then created at, and then basically you define like the data types. Whereas with Mongo, you don't need to do all of that. It's actually optional. And instead of storing the data scattered around in different tables, you can store pretty much every single data, right? So you can take all of those tables and then store it inside of one document, right? So one document, as I said. So document you can think of as a JavaScript object, and you'll see throughout this course what it looks like. It's really, really simple. Now, why would you use Mongo? Well, Mongo, it's a very scalable database, and as I said, allows you to build applications very fast. So companies use it for Internet of Things. You can use it for big data. You can use it for DevOps stuff, storing configuration, and pretty much anything really that you want, right? And the flexibility is that you can start small and then scale. And one thing about Mongo is that the API that comes with it, it's really easy, right? So, which means that anyone can get up to speed with Mongo. And this is the aim of this course. So I want to teach you everything you need to know about Mongo in order for you to go off and build applications. So, as I said, if you want to gain a certificate and enroll to the full course, go ahead and check my website. So on the full course, I teach a bunch of stuff, including data modeling, indexes, database administration, building a node.js application that connects to Mongo as a service on the cloud. So we create a cluster with 3 nodes hosted on AWS, and then we'll build a node.js application that basically connects to it and then reads some information. So yeah, and also next week I'm going to post the Spring Boot version, so connecting a Spring Boot application to a Mongo database. So make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for that video coming as well next week. Without further ado, let's kick off this course. In order for us to get started with MongoDB, we need to install it. And we can do it in 2 ways. We can either install it directly from the MongoDB website, and it's available for Linux, Mac OS, and Windows. Or we can experiment and play around with MongoDB using Docker. So for this course, we're going to use Docker because I feel like you should know how to use Docker, and Docker is widely used today. So you knowing how to use Docker will set you apart from the competition, because whatever example I show you, then you can replicate without any issues. And also the installation process is the exact same thing, whether you are on Linux, Macs, or Windows. So what I want to achieve with the Docker installation is to have both MongoDB and Mongo Express. So Mongo Express is just a GUI client that allows you to interact with your database. So basically we're going to have 2 containers. So one container for the MongoDB, the other one for the Mongo Express, and then have these 2 containers talk to each other via a Docker network. Let's go ahead and install Docker and then have both MongoDB and Mongo Express up and running. Right, so Docker is used throughout the industry, and it's something that you should know how to use. And it's so flexible, and you can pretty much have anything on Docker. So here we are using MongoDB, but you could have, for example, other databases such as Cassandra, Postgres, MySQL, and other popular databases running on Docker. So if you want to learn more about Docker, go ahead and check my website where I've got a course waiting for you. And also I'm going to leave the course under the description of this video. So to get started with Docker, navigate to docker.com, and in here on the main page, click on Get Started. And you can see that we have Docker Desktop in here. So developer productivity tools and local Kubernetes environment. So what I want you to do is to install Docker desktop. So here you can see that this has detected that I'm on a Mac. So you can see Mac, and you have Mac. So both the Intel and Apple chip, Windows and Linux. So depending on your operating system, go ahead and install Docker. Now the installation process, it's really straightforward with Docker and nothing can go wrong. So once you have Docker installed, what I'm going to do is the following. So open up your terminal, and in here, I'm going to type docker -- and then version. And this will tell me whether Docker is installed. And also in here, you can see that I do have this icon right here, and it says Docker desktop is running, right? So if I quit Docker desktop, then basically I need to start it again in order to interact with Docker. This is all for now. Catch me in the next one. So once you have Docker running, what I want you to do is, under the description of this video, I do have this docker compose.yaml file in here. And this basically is a configuration that will bring up MongoDB right here. So MongoDB and Mongo Express. So the same way I've showed you in the diagram where we have two containers. So this is the first container. So this is the first container, and then this right here is the second container, and then we have volume. So this is how we store the data, and then we have the networks, and then we have networks, and here I'm just overriding the default name for the default and then we have networks. And here I'm changing the default network name to MongoDB and then _network. So this is how the two containers will talk to each other. So let me just go step by step so you understand exactly what's happening. So this is YAML syntax, and in here, so we have the version, services. So this is the Docker Compose syntax, and inside you can name these as whatever. So here I've said MongoDB. And then we have to specify the image, which is Mongo. So this will get the latest version for MongoDB. And then this is the container name. And then here I'm actually mapping the host port. So 27017 to 27017 on the container. So this is the default MongoDB port. And then the volume. So I'm mapping data to /data inside of the container. So this data right here is part of this volume right here. And then I have a couple of environment variables. So the username and the password are root user and root pass. Then for the Mongo Express, I say image Mongo Express, and then container name Mongo Express, restart always, and then I expose the port. So 8081 on the host to 8081 on the container, and then I pass a couple of environment variables. So this is how we connect to the database. So these credentials have to be the same, and then I pass the MongoDB server, which is MongoDB. Now the username and password, ideally they should come from, for example, environment variables, but for learning purposes I just put them right here. So go and take this file and then create a docker compose.yaml file. And in here, so if I type ls, I'm actually inside of files directory, and inside I have the docker compose.yaml. So this is the file that you've just seen. If you want to learn how to use the terminal and Vim, I also do have a free course on it for you to learn how to use the terminal, because it's very vital as a software engineer that you master the terminal, and it's not that difficult, to be honest. So by following along as well in this course, I'm going to make things super easy for you to understand. So in here, so I've just navigated into files. So if I say cd, for example, /, so I can say cd / and then documents, and then inside I have courses, and then inside I have MongoDB, and then inside I have files. So ls is the exact same thing. So if I do cat docker compose, and you can see that this is the exact same content that you've seen within VS Code in here. So there you have it. So next, let's go ahead and use Docker to create these two containers and then access the database through Mongo Express. Right, so once you take this file, so let me just clear the screen again and say ls. So basically copy the contents of docker compose.yaml and create a new file like this. So docker-compose.yaml. And here you can see the contents. So let me clear the screen. So Control L. So once you have the file, what you're going to do is type docker, and then you can say dash and then compose, dash and then F, and then the name of the file. So docker compose.yaml and then up. So you can run this command, or docker and then space and then compose and dash F, docker compose and then up. So basically you can see that this is one command and this is another command. So the compose now is embedded inside of the docker command instead of having to have two separate binaries. So also, if you've named the file docker compose.yaml, you can just remove the dash F completely and just run it like this. So I'm going to press enter. And now check this out. So it's creating the volume. Oh, actually it has created the volume. So let me just scroll up. Whoops. So in here, so created the volume, the container, and then MongoDB. And if I scroll down, you can see that we have no errors, and you can see that the process is actually hanging. So if you want to run this in detached mode, so what I'm going to do is actually say Control and then C, and this is just stopping the container. Now Control and then Z, and what I'm going to do is say docker compose and then down. So I want to remove everything. So you can see that is removing everything, and there we go. So I'm going to run the exact same command right here. So docker compose up and then dash D for detached mode. So press enter. And there we go. So now you can see that we have the shell available to us. So now what I want you to do is to open up your web browser, and in here go to local host colon and then 8081. So remember, in here we exposed 8081 on the host to 8081 on the container. So let's access, press enter, and check this out. So we have Mongo Express up and running, and this is basically an application written in node.js that allows you to interact with your database. So you can see that the database is up and running. So 31 seconds ago, this is the version right here, current connection 7, available connections, and you have a bunch of information in here. So there you have it. Now let me just go back for a second here, and if you want to stop the database, so you can either say docker compose and then down, so this will remove everything, right? And then once you say up, you will basically have a clean state database, but you can say docker compose and then stop. And basically, if you come back to it, so right here, let's say that I refresh, you can see that it's not working. But if you come back to it, you can just say docker compose and then start. There we go. If I go back, reload the page, and it's up and running again. So that means, for example, if you have a database in here, then basically if you stop and start, you will not lose the database, right? Whereas if you say down, and then if you start the containers, then you don't have access to what you've done before. So use Docker Compose stop and start if you want to keep things, or Docker Compose down to tear down things, and then Docker Compose up to bring up all the containers. So there you have it. Hopefully you've managed to get this far. Also, what I want to show you is if I press Ctrl L, say Docker and then PS, you can see in here we have two containers. So this is the first container right here, and the name is MongoDB. And then we have the second container, which is Mongo Express. And you can see that they are exposing these ports. So MongoDB 27017 on the host to 2701 on the container, and the Express 8081 on the host, and then mapping to 8081 on the container. So again, if you want to learn about Docker, I do have a course just on Docker waiting for you. So you've seen how to connect your MongoDB using Mongo Express, which was really easy and straightforward. So we have other alternatives. So you've seen Mongo Express, but we have, for example, DataGrip, which is another GUI client, or MongoDB Compass, which is free and it's by MongoDB. Or we can use Mongo Shell. Now, to be honest, this is how you're going to learn how to use MongoDB, because here you are actually using raw commands instead of relying on a graphical user interface client. So to connect to the MongoDB database running on Docker, or maybe it's running locally, you can use Mongo and then the URL. So MongoDB :/localhost or whatever host, and then the port -u for the username, and then -p and then the password. So in our case, root user and root pass. So let's quickly connect to our Docker container and then connect to the Mongo instance running inside. So here, let me go back to my terminal. And remember, we have two containers. So here, so if I say Docker PS again, let me just clear the screen. You can see that we have two containers, right? So Mongo and then Mongo Express. Now take this ID right here. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to say Docker and then exec -it and then the container ID, and then say bash. So what this will do will basically exec into the container which is running the database. So press enter, and there we go. So now we are inside, and you can see that this is basically a Linux container. So here, if I type ls, you can see that you have all of these folders right here, and I'm going to explain some of these in a second. But from this point onwards, this is the exact same thing for you, whether you are using Linux or Windows or Mac, right? So this is the beauty of Docker. So now if I press Control and then L, I just want to clear the screen, or you can type clear. And now let's type together Mongo, right? And then Mongo DB :/local and then host :27017 -u root and then user -p root and then pass. So basically root user and root pass is from here. So remember, when we started the database in here, we passed these two environment variables. So the init root username and init root and then password. So root user and then root pass. So the same way when we connected from the Mongo Express, we use the same credentials, right? So this is what we're doing here. Now I'm going to press enter, and there we go. So now we have successfully connected to our database using Mongo shell. From this point onwards, we can start issuing commands against our database. So for example, if I clear the screen, so Control and then L, I can type show and then DBs, column, and then semicolon. And this will be the exact same thing for you and I. So press enter and check this out, admin, config, and then local. So remember, with Mongo Express, you saw the same databases, admin, config, and local. So there you have it. Now that we have successfully connected to the MongoDB container and use Mongo shell, now we can start our journey learning how to use MongoDB and everything that it has to offer. So to recap, the Mongo shell is in essence the interactive JavaScript interface to MongoDB. We can use it to run commands against our database. For example, so you saw Mongo, and then we use the URL to connect to it, but we can also use, for example, db dot and then collection dot insert. So this is actually inside of the shell. We can run this command to insert a document under one collection. And you're going to learn more about collections and documents next. So if you have any questions, go ahead and drop me a message. Otherwise, let's move on. So far, we have a Mongo database instance running on Docker. And you've seen that we've connected to our database using the Mongo shell. And inside of this database instance, when we used Mongo shell to show the available databases inside, you saw that we've used show DBs, and then we had the admin, config, and local. So these are the default databases that come with MongoDB. And you can see the total disk space that they take. So initially it's all 0 because they are empty. Now, in order for us to create our own database, we can use the use command. So use will create or switch to a database if already exists. So let me show you. In here, I'm inside of the container and I'm connected to the database instance. And remember, when I say show and then DBs and then semicolon, this gives us the available databases, right? And you've seen this with Mongo Express. So it's the exact same thing. So if I was here, for example, to create a new database, so let me just say Amigoscode, create database, go back, run the exact same command. Let me just clear first. And you can see that now we have Amigoscode. So that was actually through Mongo Express. Now let me go back, delete, and then type Amigoscode, delete. There we go. So if I show DBs again, it's gone. If you want to create the database with Mongo shell, it's as follows. So type use and then the database name. So Amigoscode and then semicolon. And this will either create the database or switch if exists. So here, let me just press enter. And you can see that switch to DB Amigoscode. Now, if I say show DBs once more, you can see that the database that we've just created doesn't show up. And this is because we haven't got any collection inside. So a collection is a table, and inside of a collection, we have documents. And I'm going to show you this in a second. So for now, let's just simply say DB, so db.get and then name, and you can see Amigoscode. Now, let me just quickly say db dot and then create and then collection. And I'm going to teach you collections in a second, but here Let's just type hello, so within a string, or actually quotes, and then enter, and you can see that we have okay. So this means that it did create a collection. Now if I say show DBs, you can see that now it does show because we have a collection inside. So more on collections later. But the last thing I want to show you is in here. So if I clear the screen, how do we delete a database? It's very simple. Just type db dot and then drop and then database. And this is a function, enter, and you can see that it has been dropped. So this is the response that comes back. So dropped, Amigoscode, okay, and then 1. So this is a JSON object. Now, to be honest, this is it. So if you want to see all the available methods for the database, so just type db dot and then help, just like that. And if I press enter, and there we go. Now you can see all the methods available, right? So in here, so let's have a look. So current, actually drop database, as you saw, drop user, auth, clone database, copy database, copy, actually create collection. So you've seen this, and yeah, so you can log out as well. You can reset error, set the log level, profiling, stats, so on and so forth, right? And you can even check the actual version in here. So there you have it. This is how you create and drop databases. Right, so we know how to create databases. Now let's learn about collections and documents. So Mongo stores documents, i.e. rows, in collections. So basically, if you've done any relational database, then this should be familiar. So documents, they are the same as rows, and collections are what it's known as tables in the relational database world. So we have in here a bunch of documents. These are similar to JSON objects, and basically these are the documents, and then the collection is what holds all of these documents. Now if we want to create a collection with Mongo, it's as follows. So here, remember I showed you the db.help command, and it shows all the available commands for db. So here, if I search for collection, so we have collection stats, but here, have a look. So this one here, db, and then create collection, and then we pass the name, and then we can pass some configuration. So size, capped, max, so on and so forth. So let's quickly create a collection and then also specify some of these attributes so you can see in action. So here, let me just clear the screen, Control L, and then type db dot and then create collection. And here we can pass a name, right? So a collection, you can think of a collection as a table in the SQL world or relational database world. So here I can say, for example, person, right? So this is the person collection. So if I press enter, you can see that it's been created. Now, if I want to see all the collections, type show and then collections. And you can see that we have the person collection. Now, let me type db dot and then collection dot and then stats. So here I want to show you the stats for the collection, and in fact this should be person, right? So db.person and then stats, and press enter, and now have a look. So here, so we have a bunch of information. We can see like total indexes, total size, scale factor. So if I scroll up, so there's a bunch of information which if I make my font smaller, you can see everything properly. But you can see that in here, you can see the size right here. It's 0, the count is 0, storage, and then free storage, capped, false, and then the NS is Amigoscode, dot, and then person, right? So this is the database, and then dot person, this is the collection. Now let's drop this collection by typing db dot and then person dot and then drop. And there we go. So if I show collections again, you can see that it's gone. So now let's type the exact same command. So db.create collection, and now here we can pass the configuration object. So here I can say capped, and then column, and then true, and then comma. And basically when the database is capped, we have to specify the size. So size, and then this will be the value in bytes. So here, let me just say 61, 42, and then 800. And we can also specify the max. So this is the max number of documents. So here, let's say that we want to have, for example, 3,000 documents, right? So 3,000 documents, and we can have other configuration. But now if I press enter, you can see that this worked. And if I show the stats again, so dbperson.stats, and there we have it. So you can actually find all of that information if you scroll up, and you can see everything that we have configured for this collection. So obviously, let me just go back and actually delete this collection, because I want to show you that we don't have to create a collection by saying db.create collection. So I'm going to show you another way that you can do that. But in here, let me show you the configuration available if you want to fine tune your collection. So let me collapse this. And in here, you can see that you say db create collection, and then you pass the name, and then you can say whether it's capped or not, auto index, the size, the max, and then the storage engine. So that's the document there. The validator. So this is how you it's like a JSON object that validates the documents that are stored within the collection. So making sure that you don't store any type of documents. And then you have the validation level, the action, index, option defaults, v1, pipeline, collation, and write concern. So some of these things will be for a database administrator, or DBA as it's called, to fine tune the database to make sure that it fits whatever needs you or your organization do require. Next, let's go ahead and learn about documents. Mongo stores data records as BSON documents, and these are like a binary representation of JSON documents. So in this example here, we have a person document, right? So it's just a JSON object with some properties and values. So name, age, status, and then groups. So you could have strings, you could have numbers, enums, arrays, so on and so forth. So in terms of data types, you can have all of these data types. So doubles, strings, objects, arrays, binary data, object ID. So this is how you uniquely identify a document. Boolean for true or false, dates, null values using the null keyword, regular expressions, JavaScript. You could have 32-bit integer and then 64-bit integer using long, decimal, and then min and max keys. Next, let me go ahead and show you how to create documents with MongoDB. To create a document inside of a collection, we need to do the following. So first, we need to have the document structure that we want to store. So in here, I've got this object right here, and in here, I've called it student, and this represents a student. And you can grab all of this from the description of this video. But here you see that we have first name, last name, email, gender, country, is student active, favorite subjects, which is a list right here or an array. And then we have total spent in books, and this is a decimal. We have booleans, we have strings, and this is like an enum, right? So basically, this is actually JavaScript. So what we can do is take this object right here and then store it inside of a collection. Now remember, so before we dropped the collection, so if I say show and then collections, you can see that we have nothing. But now if I say db.create and then collection, and then here let's say student. So remember, a collection is like a table in SQL world. Enter. Okay. If I show collections, and by the way, I'm just pressing the up arrow to go to the previous command. So here you can see that we have student. If I was to create a new collection called person, now show collections, we have person and student. So what I want to do is actually, so let me just say db and then the collection name. So here I'm going to drop the student. So dot and then drop, just like that. If I clear the screen and then show collections again, we only have person. Now, in order for us to create a collection, we can do it as we've done with db create collection. So like this, or if we add a document and the collection doesn't exist, then it automatically creates the collection. So let me show you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press, actually, let me just clear this. Actually, I tried to create person, but it already exists, so that's fine. So let me just say clear in here, and I meant Control L, sorry. So I'm going to take this JSON object in here, Command C, and then paste that, enter. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say db dot and then the collection that I want. So in my case, student. And let me just clear the screen. And then dot and then insert. And then we want to insert student. So student right here is because we have defined this variable right here. Now, if I press enter, you can see that we have this response, right result, and inserted, and then 1. Now I'm going to say db dot and then student dot and then count, and check this out, we have 1 student. And now if I say show, so in here show collections, you can see that we have the student collection in here. So we didn't create that with the create collection, but instead when we added or when we inserted a new student, when the collection doesn't exist, here when the collection doesn't exist, it creates a new collection. Now what I want to do is db dot and then student dot and then find. So basically in here, let's just get all the students from our collection. So here, press enter and check this out. You can see that we have an object right here, and this is the student that we've just added. So we can take this a step further and we can say dot and then pretty, just like that. And if I press enter, you can see that now we have this object prettified. So you can see that we have the ID right here, which was added for us, and then the name, last name, email, gender, cursor, student active, favorite subjects, total spent, so on and so forth. So we're going to touch more on how to query data from your collections, but now you should have an understanding of how collections and documents do work. So this is a document right here, and this is like a row in SQL inside of the student collection. So the student collection in SQL world is like a table. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop me a message. Otherwise, let's move on. for this section, let's go ahead and learn how to query within MongoDB. So in here, I do have this variable right here called students, and this contains a list or an array of objects. So this right here is a variable and it contains a bunch of objects, right? So basically one object, 2, 3. So basically I think it's 10 students in here. So what I'm going to do is to grab all of this, and you can find this under the description of this video. And right here, I'm just going to basically copy this. So Command C, and then I'm going to go back to my terminal and then paste this. There we go. And then press enter. And now what I'm going to do is insert the students to our collection. So before, remember, we said db dot and then the name of the collection. So student dot and then insert. So insert allows you to insert one document, or if you want to insert many documents, you can say insert many, and this takes an array of documents. So in our case, students. And you can see it's really straightforward. Now if I press enter, you can see that we get back a bunch of IDs right here. So basically 10 IDs, and you can see the response. So acknowledged, and then true, and then inserted IDs, and you can see that we have 10 students that were inserted. And this now will allow us to play around with some queries within Mongo. So if you want to insert one student or one document, you say insert right here, and then you pass the object. So technically you could pass the object like this and then specify all the key and values for the document, or you can just create a variable as we've done and then pass student. So this will insert one document, or if you want many, you can say many, and this time takes a list or an array of and then objects. So just like that. So in our case, what we've done, we basically copied this student right here into the shell, and then we added, so here we added students just like that. It's much neater. So there you have it. You now know how to insert documents into MongoDB. So you've seen how to insert new documents, and now let's learn how to basically use the find method to query documents from our collections. So as we've been doing throughout this course, we have to use db and then the name of the collection and then find. Now the find method takes two things. So one is the criteria. So this is the searching part, and then the projection. So these are the fields that we want from our find method, right? So the same with SQL. So when you say select and then the column name, so here is the same. So these are the columns right here in the SQL world. And then we can basically chain these with cursor modifiers, which I'm going to show you in a second. So let's go ahead and experiment with some queries. And in here, you've seen that we've used db.student.find and then pretty, and this gives us the data back. So currently we have 10 students. So here, if I say dot and then count, or I think we have 11 students. So let's just have a look. There we go. We've got 11 students. Now let's use the find. So I'm going to press the up arrow, and then inside I can pass this object. So the first object is the criteria. So if I pass an empty object, so actually let me just remove the count from there. If I pass an empty object, you can see that I do get 11 students back. But now let's say that in here, I'm going to pass the, let's say first and then name. So this is the key, and then the value. So let's say Kali. And then if I press enter, we have no one with that name, and that's because this is actually without an E. So Kali. And there we go. You can see that we have one document back. So basically you can see how we are using this first object for the query criteria. Now in here, what we can do is the second object here is the actual projection. So the projection is the fields that we want to select from, right? So here, let's say that we just want, for example, we want to grab the name, for example, right? So if you want the name, you just say first and then name, and then here you say 1. So when you say 1, it means that you want this property to be selected. So if I press enter, and I've got a mistake there, so basically I need to remove that from there, and I need to close this first object here. And then if I clear the screen, and then basically you can see that we have one object in here, and the second one is the projection. So here, if I press enter, you can see that we just selected the ID and the first name. If you want the last name, you basically say comma, last, and then name, and then column, and then 1. So you want to select that as well. And there we go. So you see that now we are selecting more and more. Let's also get the gender. So in here, comma, gender, and then here, let's just say, we know that it's a male, right? So M. And you can see that we're getting that back. Or in fact, I meant to add a 1 here, sorry. So we want to select that, just like that. So this is actually female. So Kali, it's a female, my bad. So there you have it. Now, if you want to exclude fields, you basically say -1. So if I want basically everything but the gender, and then I don't want the last name as well as the first name, I just say -1, enter, and in fact it should be 0, my bad. So 0, 0 here, and then 0, enter. And you can see that now we have every single field but first name, last name, and gender. So you can see that this is really powerful. Next, let me go ahead and show you some of the more advanced query filters that you can have within the first object. So you've learned how to insert documents, you've learned how to read documents with the find method. Now, how do we update documents? So in here, I've got this query where I'm going to select everyone, and then I want to project the first and last name. So here we have this last student right here called Kali and then Walkden. So let's actually update Kali to, let's say, Maria, for example. So she's a female, right? So if I show you that she's a female, so here, gender, and then 1. So basically, this is true. So I'm saying I want to get the gender as well. And there we go. She's a female. Now to update this, right? So the name, we use the update function, and inside we use the $set keyword. So let's say db dot and then student dot update, and inside we have the query. So let's say that we want to basically just grab the ID. So here I'm going to grab the ID and then say underscore ID and then equals to that. And this has to be an object, by the way. So let me just go back here. There we go. And then comma, and then this is a new object. And here I'm going to say $, and then set, and then colon, and then $, and then the new value for first name. So I'm going to say first name and then column, and then this will be, so we said Maria, right? So Maria, just like that. Enter, and you can see that matched 1 and then modified 1. So if I search again, so let's search all the students, and there we go. We've updated Maria in here. So this is really cool. Now, if you want to update many objects, you say db dot and then the collection name, so student dot and then update and then many. So the same with insert many, you have update many. So I'm not going to do that for now. So what I want to show you is how to basically get rid of, let's say, the last name field, right? So you want to get rid of the property. So for that, you can use the unset. So maybe it's a little bit dangerous for you to do that, but just let me show you how to do it anyways. So here I'm going to press the up arrow because it's almost the same thing. So we're going to update, and then the ID is that. And then instead of saying set, I'm going to say unset in here. And for the last name, so I want to unset the last name. So last name. And then instead of saying Maria in here, I'm going to pass 1 for true. So I want to unset the last name. So press enter, and you can see that it did modify. Now, if I basically find all the students again, you can see that, so Maria doesn't have the last name property. And there we go. So the last thing that I want to show you is, so let's just basically also select, so I think it was in here total and then spend in books. So let's just basically get all of those. So I'm going to say 1 in here, and you can see that we have 0, 100, 5, 0, 0, 100. So let's say that we want to increment all of these by 5, for example. So the way to do it is as follows. So let's say db dot and then student dot and then update, and let's just do it for this student right here. So it has 0. So I'm going to take the ID. So I'm going to take this ID right here, and here the first object will be underscore ID. So that's the search criteria, and then pass that. And then the second object in here will be $, and then inc. So this is an increment, and I want to increment the total spend. So this property right here, column, and then the amount that I want to increment. So in fact, let's just say that the student spent $999, and then enter. You can see that matched 1, modified 1. If I search again, check this out, 999. So if I increment by 1, you should see that it will be 1,000. So here, the same student, and then search, and there we go. Now, if I clear the screen and if I search, so let's just search basically we want to search everyone, and then just grab the favorite subject. And here, let's say that we want to remove IT from this array. So the way to do it is as follows. So we're going to use almost the same function in here. So here we're going to say update, and then instead of increment, we're going to say, let's say pull. So we're going to pull IT from. So here we need the favorite subjects in there, and let me just delete that. So just like this, and then the actual value, right? So the value is IT. So what I'm saying is update, and then this ID, so the student with this ID, and then I want to pull from this key right here, which is favorite subjects. I want to pull the value IT. So if I press enter, you can see that modified. Now let's search. So here, let's search everyone, and we should see that this ID in here will have nothing. So, and basically I just got the wrong search there. So it was this one. So enter, or actually, which one was it? It was favorite subject, this one right here. There we go. So the student that we updated was, so 73 in here. So if I search for him, so let's search for this student, and there we go. So you see that it doesn't have IT. So now let me just do for the last one here. So I think I meant to update for this student. So anyways, let's just update this student here. So this ID here is the same, and it has IT in here. So now it should have nothing. So there we go. That's done. Let's find again. And you can see that favorite subjects in here is actually empty, right? So now if you want to add back IT, you just say push. So push and pull. So push. There we go. Let's search. And IT is back. Let's push another element in here. So let's just say computer science. There we go. If I search again, and you can see that it works. So there you have it. This is how you update documents with MongoDB. So now let's learn how to delete from our collection. So in here, let's search for everyone. So db dot and then find, and or actually db and then student dot find, and for now let's just say that we want to have an empty object because we want to project. Let's just project the ID. So the ID, it's sufficient in here. So underscore ID and then dot and then pretty. And I'm missing a 1 in there. So column and then 1, enter. And this should be student and not student. So stu and then dent. There we go. And you can see that we have 11 students. Now let's delete this student with this ID in here. So just grab that and then say db dot and then student dot and then delete and then 1, and then we pass the search criteria. So here I'm going to pass the object and then say ID. So underscore, underscore and then ID and then the ID, just like that. Enter, and you can see that delete count 1. And if I search now for everyone, you can see that it's not in the list. Now what happens if I was to basically delete just like this? So let's just pass an empty object in here. Let's just find what's going to happen. So here, if I press enter, you can see that it's always deleting 1. So here, because we're not passing a search count, and basically if I say dot and then count in here, just like that, you can see that we have 7. If I don't have the filter right here, you can see that it keeps on deleting from the collection. So it's always advisable for you to have your filter criteria in here. So as we've done, so ID, or actually this one here, right? Because deleting, it's something which is really important when it comes to building applications. You don't want to delete data by mistake because it will cause all sorts of issues. So if you want to delete all females, for example, all males, let's say all males, right? So you say delete and then many, and here I'm going to say gender and then equals to, and then F or M actually, and then enter. You can see that deleted 3 in here. So deleted 3, or basically deleted all males. Now if I find in here, and then if I say gender and then 1 and remove the count in here, there we go. So we only have females in our collection. Now if I want to delete, so if I say delete and then pass an empty object, enter, you can see that now it actually deleted everyone, right? So before, remember, we had this variable right here. So let's just add all of this back. So Command C, and then let me just clear the screen, Control L, paste that, and then db dot, and then student dot insert many, and then pass the array, so students, just like that. There we go. And now we have our data back. So let me just show you again. So here, if I delete many, deletes 10, but let's just add all of them again, and there you go. So this is how you delete data with MongoDB. I hope that you had fun throughout this course. So if you want to gain a certificate and basically learn more about Mongo, and basically take your skills further by understanding indexes, database administration, creating clusters, and all that good stuff, then enroll to my course on my website, and you can use the coupon code which will be in the description of this video for 20% off. It was a pleasure teaching you Mongo, and I said that next week I'm going to actually build a Spring Boot application connecting to a Mongo database. So you'll see how easy it is as well to build a Spring Boot application. But yeah, so if you want to master JavaScript, Node, and all that good stuff, then check my website. I've got plenty of courses waiting for you. That's all for now. Don't forget to subscribe. Give me a thumbs up so I can keep on recording these videos, and comment down below. Let me know what you thought about this video. I'll catch you on the next one. Assalamu alaikum.